Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning and welcome to Open Your Eyes. I'm April Martinez.
And I am Isani Cayetano.
Good morning, Belize. Good morning, Isani.
Good morning, my friend.
Today was I feel like it was rushing this morning because of the amount of fog on the highway. It was, and I feel like it's going to be like this for quite some time, in the morning particularly.
When you see thick fog,
yeah.
It's indicative of a very warm day ahead.
Well, you know, so we had Francisca Willington on the phone the other day, and we asked her about that because we particularly wanted to know what fog was, and she said it's just clouds on the ground.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a hot day. I think
we've come to understand, and this is very, very colloquial, right? That fog and heat go together. Maybe not, but that's our belief and understanding when we see fog.
Well,
right?
I mean, generally, as particularly in Belmopan, that's usually the case, but Belmopan hot all the time. But yeah, I felt, not myself, but other persons that are on the road, I felt it was a very slow kind of pace going from Belmopan all the way to probably about Hattieville.
Yeah.
And then when Hattieville, there was just nothing, and then it seemed that everybody was just rushing to get from point A to point B because they were late.
Okay, but here's the thing though, and perhaps we use this opportunity to advise motorists who are traveling along the highway to exercise extreme caution because visibility is very important.
Yes.
And if there's fog on the road, you're not really seeing that far ahead of you, then you need to be very careful.
Yeah, and always use the
there are
hazard
cyclists
lights
on the road.
Yes.
In some places there are pedestrians walking the road, and of course there are other motorists who are using the highway as well. And
you know, that's when you really realize how dark the highway is. And I think I've been petitioning for this since I started Open Your Eyes to, you know, more lights along the highway. But Isan is absolutely right. You know, if you're going to be traveling on the road as early as I would normally travel on the road, between the hours of about 4 to 6 in the morning, please take necessary precaution around this time. That fog is thick. No matter how good you think you know the highway, it doesn't matter. There will always be something, so try your best to be
due care and attention.
Yes, of course. And that kind of particular weather kind of makes you feel like the Christmas season is in the air. It kind of feels
Speaking of which, I was out this weekend doing some shopping with the missus, right? The amount of people who are downtown this weekend, my gosh, it was amazing, right? You have people from Belize City.
Yeah.
You have people from out district who converged on Belize City.
Yeah.
And Albert Street was alive. You go, if you like, I was in Mikado for a few hours, right?
Hours.
Yeah.
Okay,
Look, when you're shopping with a woman,
I can't say nothing.
good. A few hours, that's fair to say. All right, so Mikado was crowded. Debari was crowded. And points in between, if you're discussing downtown Belize City.
Yeah.
Everybody was out trying to get a steal and a deal, you know, trying to spend their money and get things in order ahead of December. And I say December because we're only a few days away, but people aren't waiting for December proper, you know, they're getting ahead of the whole rush and what have you, and it's a good feeling. If I recall my childhood, for instance, right, going out to my mom, you know, that was several hours to, you have to buy, cloth, you have to buy marley, you have to buy everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's traditional that you go to your family and you pick your items that you want and that sort of stuff. And it's just a wonderful time of year.
Yeah. I didn't go out this weekend, but we already, and I know that's the same for certain persons, they probably already put up their Christmas tree. Or I mean, I know folks that start their Christmas shopping in October just to get away from that holiday rush from other that would initially happen within the months of November and December. And people are already putting up lights. Honestly, some people never even wait till the 19th. They put up lights from the first weekend in November. But and we could talk about the commercialization about it another day. But I think that this is the year that it's that revitalization, right? Everybody wants to come out. Everybody wants to do and feel that spirit, you know.
You know what? I have a fundamental issue with April. I'm not complaining. I'm just putting this out there. Christmas is a season.
Yeah.
Right? And in as much as we are quick to get into the Christmas season, whereas if you look at the commercial aspect of it, right? I know you didn't want to touch it, but I'll just, broach the topic. If you look at the commercial aspect of it, there are stores in Belize City that put up this Christmas tree and decoration from mid-October.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the season doesn't commence in earnest until December, really. All of that to say this. On the 19th of November at midnight, which becomes the 20th, the first Christmas carol is played on radio.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yeah.
What I don't like is that it ends on Christmas Day. Right? It's a season.
Yeah.
If we're doing that, then we go from the 20th of November all the way through into January 2nd, for instance, right? Because we'll play the Christmas carols until December 25th, and then thereafter is all lang syne, to usher in a new year. And that's it falls flat.
Yeah.
That is my thing.
I really think that it's a cultural thing in Belize, though, because I think, like, for instance, other Central American countries, and I can speak to, for example, Mexico, their season ends after January 6th because their particular, in their traditions, the three wise men reach baby Jesus January 6th.
Yeah.
That is when they open the presents for Christmas and all of that. So their season starts from probably about ending on November to after January 6th.
Okay.
And they have that same...
Because that's you're following the religious sequence. So when we go to church, in the Catholic faith, the Christmas songs continue into January.
Yeah.
To complement what you're saying, you're perfectly right. I'm talking about radio primarily, right?
So media.
Yeah, I don't know that in television we still play Christmas songs, right?
No, I think we still talk about it, yeah.
Radio primarily, like I'm saying, like on December 25th at midnight.
That's it.
Everything gone dead.
I wonder though, and I would imagine, I know a lot of people look forward to like Christmas Day because that's the Christmas dinner and the presents and so forth. Honestly, Christmas Day doesn't feel like much. I like the days leading to Christmas Day. I like the feeling of, people are putting up still like last minute decorations, baking and doing all of these old family traditions that you probably wouldn't even think of unless your sister bring it up or your brother bring it up. And then everybody kind of just comes together. And then Christmas Day, everybody eat, open gift, and then not talk to me till next year. So I like the days leading up. You feel that coziness.
I do it primarily for the kids because I always tell myself, for someone like me that I have everything, it's difficult to really buy a gift. Or, like, I accept it, but I don't ask for anything.
Yeah.
Because whatever I want, I'm able to get on my own. So I do it primarily for my kids, you know, to see the joy. Well, my daughter is at a certain age where, you know, it's part of it, but she already knows what she wants and what she's going to get and what have you. But with my son, you know, if I tell him I have a present or a gift for him, his excitement, you know, he bothers me every 5 minutes to know want to know what it is and when he'll get it. And that's, you know, there's a certain warmth that comes with that.
But I think I will do you one better, and I will say that, yes, you are, and that is always the difficulty with adults, right?
Yeah.
But I was telling my mom just yesterday, we were putting up the Christmas tree. I told her that I love that it doesn't matter now that her kids are older. She loves to do all of these traditions of putting up the tree. She wants to put up lights. She wants to bake, and it's her feeling of keeping everything festive that makes the entire house still feels festive. I think that that particular festive feeling, that magical feeling, kind of goes away when you become an adult, because you're stressed out, you're tired, you lash out, you kind of want the holiday be over because of all of the commercialization behind it. And
I beg to differ. While I agree with you that to some extent that feeling isn't there as it was when you're a child, I think so primarily because as an adult you have more responsibilities, right?
Yes.
Like for instance, in my household, what I've learned to do, I don't wait for December to do certain things that would bring about the Christmas vibe. There are certain projects that you undertake over the course of the year that get you ready for December. And that's how I think, right? If I know I'm gonna do painting, if I know I'm gonna do renovation or a certain project around the house, I get that done well before December. Because December time, it's not for painting and drywall and all these things.
People still want to do it. But no, I do, you know, I do appreciate that, that warm, festive feeling. I don't know, sometimes you just think that people are nicer and people feel a little bit more genuine and selfless. And I think that's the whole point of the gift giving, that it's all about that genuine love and selflessness for somebody else, that you buy something for that person. There you go. And I hope that we're able to provide you with some love and positivity this early Monday morning. You know, talking about Christmas, and I feel like we'll be talking about Christmas for quite some time now after this. But as we move on.
I presume that when I come on set next week, Monday,
the
tree will already be up and the place will already be lit up for Christmas.
You know what? The fact that it's not up yet is a little bit surprising to me. But yes, we will be talking more about Christmas.
Speak it into existence.
And as we move on into our show for this morning, we move on to our eye-opener for today. Our eye-opener is taken from dailyom.com. It goes like this. Change can enter our lives silently, and this change can be just as important as change we have worked hard for. We all see things about ourselves, our relationships, and our world that we want to change. Often this desire leads us to take action toward inner work that we need to do or toward some external goal. Sometimes without any big announcement or momentous shift, we wake up to find that change has happened, seemingly without us. This can feel like a miracle as we suddenly see that our self-esteem really does seem to be intact, or our partner actually is helping out around the house more. We may even wonder whether all of our hard work had anything to do with it, or if it just happened by a way of grace. The same laws that govern the growth of plants oversee our own internal and external changes. We observe, consider, work, and wonder, tilling the soil of our lives, planting seeds and tending to them. Sometimes the hard part is knowing when to stop and let go, handing it over to the universe. Usually this happens by the way of distraction or disruption, or attention being called away to other more pressing concerns. And it is often at these times when we are not looking, in the silence of our nature's embrace, that the miracle of change happens. I like change. I welcome change.
Change is inevitable.
Change is inevitable. You can't control it, no matter why would you try? That is the question. But Change can enter our lives silently, and this change can be just as important as change that we have worked for. I like this line.
April, like you've mentioned, right? Change can be subtle, or change can be a seismic shift.
Yeah.
But change is inevitable.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. What we do is to mentally prepare ourselves that things will change. You know, if you look at the seasons, for instance, if you look at your trajectory as an individual, born as a child, and in many cases you go through the full thing. You go through your childhood years, your adolescence, your adulthood, and then your senior years, right? But you are changing as you go along. And that also affects your outlook, it affects your mentality, and it affects your appreciation for the life you live and the people that are around you, you know?
Yeah.
I'll say this, I'm a music fanatic, right? A music lover, and an avid one, right? And so one of my favorite artists is Nas. And for me, there was this profound statement that he made in one song. I think it's The Message. It says, but the long and short of it is that people change, love changes, best friends become strangers, right? Because you're going through this arc where, you know, nothing is stagnant or static.
Yeah.
It's very fluid, right? So the people you grow up with or around, you're changing and they're changing, right? If you have a notion that love means this one thing, when you go through that journey, it changes shape and form, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's profound when you look at it that way.
I think that sometimes we don't see change as primarily if you are stuck in a routine. So if you are doing your 8 to 5 every single day, your Saturday looks like this, your Sunday looks like this, and it's just this, you feel like it's not moving, right? And so sometimes when that momentous shift or that drastic change occurs, yes, you're supposed to be mentally prepared, but it does take you by surprise. And it is your attitude, or it is your approach to that change that does make the difference of how you move forward. Because if you are negative towards it, or you don't want it, and so you try your best to stay away from that particular change, which, you know, like Isani rightfully mentioned, there's no way that you can avoid it. That does make the difference in how you move on and progress in your life. So wherever you are this morning and change is occurring, whether by your choice or by not, welcome it with a positive attitude for today, as your weather, your seasons change, as we're trying our best. Now it's really bright and sunny outside, and you would have never guessed that I was crawling at about 40 miles per hour this morning in this thick fog. Now it's really bright and sunny out. You change, your situations change. So do your best to welcome it as quickly as possible, as we wait for our folks from the Met Service to come online with our weather for this morning. Sane, what is the one change that you think has impacted your life as greatly as it is right now?
Parenthood. I didn't hesitate. Parenthood.
Parenthood.
I say that because, you know, when you're transitioning, in my case, transitioning from boy to man, and there's adolescence in between, we take a lot of things for granted, right? When you become a father and you realize that there are certain responsibilities, there are certain expectations, and to err is human, so there are times when we fall short of that. However, in pursuit of being able to achieve these goals or to meet the expectations and what have you, your kids are looking at you, your kids are seeing certain things. You see yourself being the parent that your parents were to you, and that sort of stuff. And that to me embodies the change, right? Because it's a perspective, it's a responsibility, and it's a matter of delivering on that.
I mean, I can't, I wouldn't know how that feels, but
You'll get
I
there
do
eventually, I
think,
presume.
I do think that the way our parents behave and act, the their changes do affect us.
Yeah.
And so, of course, naturally, we would have to, not necessarily naturally, but we would have to follow on with that particular change. I don't know what your kids would think. But as we move on with our weather for this morning, we have it right here, folks, from our Met Service.
Good morning, Belize. A light to moderate easterly airflow prevailing. The 24-hour forecast for Belize and her coastal waters calls for sunny skies today with a few cloudy intervals, and high temperatures today are expected to reach 87 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast to 91 inland and 82 up in the mountains. Tonight, skies will be partly cloudy with low temperatures of 78 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast to 72 inland and 66 in the higher elevation. A few showers and isolated thunderstorms will continue to develop over the south this morning. This afternoon, showers will be generally isolated along with inland afternoon isolated thunderstorms. Tonight and tomorrow morning, shower activity will be isolated except for the south where a few showers or isolated thunderstorms can be expected. The winds will blow from the east to southeast at 5 to 15 knots and the sea state will be choppy. A low tide will occur at 8:02 this morning, followed by a high at 2:20 in the afternoon. Another low occurs at 6:58 this evening and a high at 21 minutes past 1 tomorrow morning. The sun will rise at 6:05 this morning and set at 5:16 p.m. The moon comes up at 10:45 this morning and set at 10:22 tonight. The outlook for Tuesday and Tuesday night is for mainly fair weather with isolated showers, except for a few more daytime showers up north. In the sargassum forecast, the chance of sargassum mass affecting our beaches during the coming days will remain very low. In the tropical weather outlook for the North Atlantic, the Caribbean Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico, tropical cyclone formation is not expected over the next 48 hours. And that's your morning forecast that was prepared here at the National Meteorological Service.
All right, there you have it. A few showers and isolated thunderstorms. So just please make sure that wherever you are, if you're on the road, if you are traveling, please ensure that you are safe and take as much precaution as possible. And we move on with our show for this morning with our Eye on the News.
There are a lot for us to discuss this morning. First of all, a new agreement has been signed between the heads of state for Belize and Venezuela. We reported last week that Prime Minister John Briceño visited Venezuela. Where he met with President Nicolas Maduro. And coming out of those meetings was the signing of a revised Petro-Caribe agreement between Belize and Venezuela. It is interesting because in the previous administration, there was a similar agreement in place where the former Prime Minister, Dean Barrow, also met with the head of state of Venezuela at the time, and monies were set aside by the Venezuelan government for Belize to access for various purposes, including infrastructure development. And while Petro-Caribe stands for a certain purpose, some people look at it as a good thing. Some people looked at it as, okay, this is free money and it is being squandered for personal or political, I wouldn't say personal, let me take that back, for political gains, right, mileage. And I think as a citizen, how the monies are used for the development of the Belizean people is important. If it improves their quality of life, if it improves access to healthcare, to education, you know, transportation to move from point A to point B wherever you are, I think for the purpose of that, it's a good thing. How the monies are managed, because it's a part of the public purse, so to speak, is equally important. So we need to keep a watchful eye and hold the government of the day accountable for how the monies would be spent.
I agree. I do think that one of the things that we have been lacking for quite some time in Belize, doesn't matter what administration is in, is that transparency when it comes to funds that are provided and given and loaned to Belize. In respect to Petrocaribe, my brain kind of went elsewhere when I read this report, and it was more along the lines of the way diplomacy works. And Belize has been very fortunate, and I don't think that we realize how fortunate Belize has been when it comes to certain bilateral agreements, and how supportive our, countries that are around us are when it comes to providing debt relief and so forth, and hurricane relief and natural disaster relief and all of these other agencies that provide funds to Belize. I don't think we realize the level of fortune that we have in that regard. And when it comes to this particular funding, I recall a time when Venezuela was in dire need of assistance. I recall it, and that country, I think it was, people were scammering to buy a loaf of bread. It was so bad.
Well,
and let me just say, I don't know what Belize did to assist. I don't know what Belize did to assist. This is my, based on my understanding. But the world basically turned its back. And I will say it to kind of just come back to the full picture of when these diplomatic exchanges happen, we have to be aware of the things that other countries do to support us, but we have to be equally aware of how we support other countries.
What you're discussing is a geopolitical issue between the United States and Venezuela, and the recognition of the Maduro administration, right? And the sanctions placed against Venezuela because the United States government doesn't recognize the Maduro administration as such, right? And so that created its own challenges and subsequent hardships for residents or people of Venezuela. Now, it has to do with oil, it has to do with everything else that Venezuela as a nation state has as its resources and its output, so to speak, right? But beyond that, I think rational people could see where you can't leave a country in isolation. If you look at what happened with Cuba and the United States, which is also a geopolitical issue, where there are certain sanctions and embargoes placed on Cuba, that has been a standing situation, so to speak. But the rest of the world, we see Cuba for what it is, in much the same way we see Venezuela for what it is. You know, it's an issue that two countries have, but the rest, and while one country has major influence over
other
the rest of the world, so to speak, there is still a certain independent thought that should guide how we deal with other countries that the United States, for instance, may not have the best of relationship with.
Keyword should, right? I don't know if I necessarily agree that the rest of the world saw Venezuela for what it is, because for the longest of time they were in need of a lot of support. And I just want to full circle it back to the Petrocaribe, because I don't want to go into the depth of discussion of U.S. versus Venezuela. We'll be here all day. But I needed to point out that we often see these greater countries support us, but we don't often hear about how Belize supports them, and that is what I was trying to get a hold of, right? That, yes, great, thank you so much. We welcome the assistance. Let's see how we can also be a friend and support them. And that was my 2 cents of this story. So yes,
and there's that picture,
there is
that image.
that picture of the revised Petro Caribe, and I do agree with you, Isani. We need to know how it's being spent.
Yeah.
We need to know how we are able to be supported. What are they going to do with it?
Speaking of how it will be spent, right? It takes us now to another conversation where, for instance, on Friday, there was the Children's Parliament.
Yes.
And this coming Friday, there's a real parliament. Right?
I enjoyed that.
And I think one of the takeaways for me, and I've sat on this couch numerous times in the wake of a House meeting discussing decorum and the way how elected officials conduct themselves, how they comport themselves, right? And so one of the interesting things for me coming out of Friday's Children's Parliament is how honorable the young parliamentarians really are. And I think that should set an example for the adult parliamentarians, the ones that we actually elected to office, in terms of how they should carry themselves.
You know, we always talk about children are the future. We always talk about that. It seems like such a cliche slogan, but Isani, I believe and I hope that this particular culture of good character, if I may say, in the House, if it continues on in this manner, I feel like maybe in the next 20 years, 10 to 20 years, we see a different way that the House meetings are being carried out. I was so impressed by these parliamentarians, that not just by the way they conducted themselves, but by the passion and how they were able to so eloquently discuss this bill and discuss the way that they wanted certain procedures to be carried out, things that we talk about on this show, things that we talk about in conversation. And one of the greater parts of this parliament that I think most people took away was the inclusivity part of it. Not just with folks with disability, but the fact that there was somebody there doing sign. That young man is not hard of hearing or deaf. He just wants to learn so that he's able to communicate with other persons that are. And I do think that that particular way of thinking will sprout a new culture that genuinely embraces differences.
Fair enough. So in discussing what's taking place in Parliament, then we go to the House meeting that will be held on December 2nd, right? That's this Friday. Okay, it's the first House meeting that will be held following Hurricane Lisa. So I think perhaps there will be some formal announcement as to how much monies Belize has either received or how much monies will go towards the overall hurricane relief, right? As in perhaps an official figure. That is one. And two, my understanding is that also because of Hurricane Lisa, and we've witnessed the damage to the Supreme Court building, I understand that funds will be set aside coming out of perhaps a supplementary for the repairs to be done on the the public building, right? And man, last week when you look at what took place there, well, several weeks ago, the roof itself flew off. Parts of the roof flew off in the hurricane. And last week, the ceiling gave way. And what is interesting for me is that the third Monday in January is reserved for the ceremonial opening of the Supreme Court. Right? Every year, the 3rd of January, the judiciary marches down from St. John's Cathedral to the court, the foot of the court building, and there's all this pomp and circumstance. But the great irony for me is that all the building gets is a slap of paint, right?
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be the kind of assessment to ensure that the structural integrity of the building remains intact. It just gets a fresh slap of gray paint and green and white, and we move along. And I think what has happened here lays bare the fact that there is the need for an engineer or someone to come in and do a thorough assessment of this building. It stands as a historical structure in Belize, right? And it deserves the kind of attention. So I think coming out of the House meeting on Friday, this will be one of the issues that will be addressed.
I would hope so, Isani, just because you're absolutely right. It is a historical building, and one of the key factors about this particular courthouse is not just the label, but the entire infrastructure to make sure that you keep it in the same order or the same design that it is, would require consultancy from probably niche to assist in how they're able to keep the structure the same. Consultancy from an engineer and architect that is, that has worked on historical buildings before, so that they're able to keep it and maintain it as it naturally should be, and then yearly upkeep. Because we were just talking about change, right?
Yeah.
This particular building is one of those that I'm so sad that it had to take the entire ceiling to collapse for us to pay attention to it and to see that we have to fix it. But not just put a Band-Aid on it, but really and truly fix it. So I hope that does come out from that assembly meeting.
There we go. All right, so I'll leave it at that for this morning. That concludes our Eye on the News for this morning. Certainly, these stories and more we'll be able to cover at 6 p.m. in our evening newscast live on 5, or you can catch it on Facebook or YouTube.
And as we move on with our show for this morning, the conversation that has been buzzing for the past 5 years, or 27 years, if I may. We will be joined by the Minister of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management, Honorable Orlando Habet, and he will be here to talk to us about COP27.
And of course, our second segment this morning will be with our friends from the National Women's Commission and of course the Belize Family Life Association as we discuss gender-based violence. We're in the 16 days of activism, so this falls right in line with that campaign.
And of course, before we get into all of that and more, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with our first conversation. Stay tuned.
I will be there. Thank you so much.
Why are you so excited?
Let me tell you a secret. I just got off the phone with Sarah.
Hi, Santa. For Christmas, I want a pea shooter, a football. iPhone and a makeup for Christmas.
Oh, come on. 1 second.
We just learned that Santa's phone number has just been revealed. The number is 227-7132. Children all over.
I'm sorry, Dad. I shared Santa's phone number.
It's an massive season with massive deals and rewards at Penny's. From now through December 31st, earn double P-Bucks on store-wide purchasing every Friday and Saturday. That's right, 2 times the P-Bucks, which means 2 times the cash back when shopping at Penny's. Plus, get even more rewards with P-Bucks Builders on home goods, tiles, appliances, paints, and lights. And don't forget, there's also massive deals and discounts on tiles and the best brands in paints like Benjamin Moore and BH. Rewards, deals, P-Bucks. You can get it all this massive season only at Penny's, celebrating 75 years of quality and savings.
Smart introduces Real Unlimited Postpaid Plans, providing customers with unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data. Now that's a real great deal. With Smart Plus, Share 1 and 2, and Enterprise 1 and 2 plans, you can talk as much as you want, text as much as you want, and for the first time ever in Belize, you can enjoy unlimited data with your postpaid plan. So come in and sign up for an unlimited postpaid plan and enjoy limitless possibilities. In addition, other plans such as the Flex Junior, Choice, and Select have been boosted with a lot more talk, text, and data, providing you with the best value for your budget. Be unlimited with Smart. It's time to power your dollar with Smart.
Great Belize Productions Channel 5, proud winner of 9 Caribbean Media Awards for 2021. Best Investigative Report, Best News Item, Best Coverage of People with Disabilities, Best Financial Literacy Journalism, Best Videographer, Best Television Commercial Spot, and the People's Choice Award, with 2 special mentions for Financial Literacy Journalism. It's that time of the year when all that stands between you and all of this is...
Give me 5. Give me 5. Give me 5.
That's all it takes. Get your coupons at Channel 5 and Coney Drive and Channel 5's website. Then, starting Monday, December 5th, keep those phones close and tune into Channel 5 at 8 p.m. as we start our nightly giveaways until Friday, December 9th. Remember, when the phone rings, don't say
hello.
Say, give me 5.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Marian Ali, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes. Go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Belize has the highest population of the Antillean manatee in the world, and we'd like to keep it that way.
The Sea to Shore Alliance and our partners have been fighting to protect our environment and these endangered manatees.
Each year, however, their death rate continues to increase rapidly due to watercraft collision, destruction of coastal habitat, entanglement in fishing gears, garbage pollution, and poaching. Yes, poaching.
These animals are in dire trouble and they need our help.
It's our responsibility as Belizeans to protect what belongs to us.
In order to create a safe environment and future for our aquatic friends, we must act now.
Respecting no-wake zones and manatee habitat is important.
Practice sustainable fishing methods and properly discard damaged fishing gear.
People throw garbage everywhere, except in the garbage can.
Garbage stops here.
When we safeguard important habitats such as mangroves, seagrass beds, the barrier reef, and our marine lives, we are safeguarding our livelihoods.
I want you to look after my future.
What about me?
When I grow up, I want to see manatees.
We are asking for your support, and we thank you for recognizing the importance of manatees and their habitats.
Thank you for caring.
Big thank you from our aquatic friends.
I am a humanitarian.
I am a humanitarian.
We are humanitarians.
Protect. Protect.
We protect.
We should protect our manatees.
We must protect them.
Protect what belongs to us.
Protect ours.
Protect your Manatee's beliefs.
They were easily identifiable at the COP proceedings in headdresses and traditional cultural attire through the corridors and meeting halls at the International Convention Center. Indigenous peoples believe that they deserve a principal seat at the negotiating table. They were, after all, the first to sound the alarm that the climate was changing.
Indigenous peoples have long been raising the alarm on climate change because, quite frankly, it directly affects their livelihoods, it affects their lands, their territories, their distinct ways of life. And Indigenous peoples are stewards of natural spaces, natural forests, natural worlds. And so, obviously, we're the ones that would be the first to pay attention when something is changing.
While there have been inroads made and a space created for their voices to be heard, are Indigenous peoples being respected enough? Is their traditional knowledge, which can be linked to climate science, being disregarded?
It has been falling on deaf ear. Even as we stand right now, Indigenous peoples are operating on the periphery. You know, they're always marginalized. There's always a sense of discrimination against the voices of Indigenous people, the important voices. Yet, there's a lot of rhetoric, right? Indigenous people's traditional knowledge are important to climate change solutions. No one should be left behind. And still, Indigenous voices are not being front and center while we are on the front lines of the climate change struggle. And so we have to really wake up because we don't have any more time left.
But Christina Koch of the Maya Leaders Alliance in Belize says that the solution to climate change will not happen without acknowledging and accepting Indigenous peoples as allies, because their survival too depends on it.
There will not be a climate change solution without Indigenous peoples. And so it's important to really include Indigenous peoples from the design of climate change, adaptation change, include Indigenous peoples' leadership meaningfully. Their participation should be meaningful. It shouldn't be just a box that we tick off, you know. It's important that our traditional knowledge and practices are incorporated in all adaptation solutions. It's important that when we think about mitigation, that we also think about it from a human rights framework, from Indigenous peoples framework, because we do have international laws that protect our rights as Indigenous peoples. And so that has to be the basis upon which world leaders, governments, the government of Belize has to really think about its climate change approach.
The Global Indigenous Peoples Caucus from the 7 regions of the world brought the largest delegation to COP27. While their contexts are diverse, as well as their realities and relationships with land and territories, there are common agendas and interests, including areas of challenges and threats. Cantuta Conte is a youth from the Aymara indigenous people of Bolivia and South America.
I'm from Bolivia. I am from La Paz. I am from the Aymara community in Timusi and Tiwanaku. My parents are from there. Particularly for indigenous people, since 2019, since the coup d'etat in Bolivia, we have seen that there's many internalized racism and discrimination for indigenous peoples, and for our culture and our identity, our language and our costume. It is really amazing to have this opportunity to interchange ideas, experiences, and especially proposals from different indigenous youth and indigenous members of all countries and from all regions.
Where I come from, in my community, people are dying because of flooding. In other communities in the neighboring areas, there's a lot of drought. Every day we sleep under being scared of how we wake up. So many times we're waking up underwater and water washing away our homes and our everything. We are losing our lives. Children are dying. Our futures are being destroyed every day of our lives. We can't live under this anxiety anymore.
They're here not because, they have 2 years, 3 years, or they can wait for COP30 to see some results. They're here because they're feeling the brunt of climate change right now. And so we join our voices.
The intrinsic relationship between the land and indigenous peoples has COC calling on the government of Belize to continue to respect the rights of the Maya and Garifuna peoples.
Continue to respect and recognize the rights of Maya people to their lands and resources, to listen to the other indigenous groups, the Garifuna people, who are also making claims on their ancestral seas, their lands, their territories. It is in the best interests of all Belizeans to learn from indigenous traditional knowledge, to learn from the way we relate to our lands, the way we protect our lands. We're not trying to fight for land rights because we want a real estate property. We're fighting for our land tenure systems because that is what provides our way of life. That's what provides our identity. That's what helps in the struggle against climate change. And so it's important to make this connection.
That connection includes the preservation of a particular way of life for a more sustainable and just future. Reporting from COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, Dwayne Moody for News 5.
We are back, and if you are joining us right now, we are discussing all things COP27, Conference of Parties this year that was held at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt.
What we saw earlier was a piece that was put together by my colleague Dwayne Moody, who was in Egypt for COP27. And the point of that story is to highlight how closely related the indigenous communities are to their land, the land that they occupy, in the context of sustainability, one, and two, the climate change phenomenon that we're experiencing the world over, right? And what is interesting about that particular story, April, is the fact that it's Belizean, in the sense that it's something that we see, something that we understand and we could readily relate to, right? That being said, we have with us via Zoom this morning the Minister of Sustainable Development, who was also at COP27. Joining us via Zoom this morning is Minister Orlando Habet. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning, Minister.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning, Belize. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning.
We're still having a bit of audio issues.
But no, as we're trying to get the Minister properly settled with us, I wanted to share a little bit about what struck me in that particular story piece. A lot of the times we kind of go through our everyday life, and yes, we talk about climate change. We come here, we talk about climate change. We talk about climate change. And the persons that we never really think about are youth and indigenous peoples. We never really involve them in the conversation. And so I suppose that when we have our discussion with the minister right now, we'll be able to more or less get a gauge of how we are able to incorporate those persons in the discussion. Good morning, Minister.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. There you are. Good to have you with us this morning, Minister.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure. Certainly the discussions and what you were showing on the videos just now in relation to people participating at COP27, indeed, even from the perspective that there were some protests as usual in some of these meetings, but also what you mentioned, that there was participation from indigenous communities and certainly some of the youth organizations that were there, which makes it very interesting and very inclusive.
Yes.
Minister, let me cut to the chase here, right?
Yes.
You'll forgive me if I'm coming at you 100 miles an hour. There are those of us who want to be convinced that all this discussion will actually materialize into something tangible, into action being taken to change the way things are with respect of climate change and emissions and all the et cetera.
Accountability.
Right? What do we have in place that is actionable coming out of COP27?
Okay, I think that one of the biggest successes was, one, the inclusion of loss and damage on the agenda, which was not included before and has been asked. It's one of the bigger asks for some time now. So the inclusion was there on the agenda, but then when it came to the negotiations, up to almost 2 days before the end of the negotiations, there was reluctance on some of the larger economies to have the issue of the establishment of the loss and damage fund on the text of the agreement. And so what had to happen was that our negotiators, ourselves along with the AOSIS members, and we met with the UNFCCC Secretariat, and what we had to do was to try to see if we could get some support from some of the larger economies who we felt were supportive. There was a lot of back and forth. We had Denmark, we had Chile, and we had Germany, who were in favor, and so they assisted in convincing the others, I would say. And finally, it was included in the text that there will be the establishment of a fund for loss and damage. Now, that does not mean that it ends there. It's just the beginning, because still what has to be done now is to establish the mechanism for that funding, the modalities, what instruments will be used for getting those monies and distributing those monies. And of course, one of the key things that came from one of the bigger supporters, which was the European Union, was that the funding, the support should not only come from those known larger economies, but from all the larger polluters. In this case, from our interpretation, they were referring to countries like China, who were not classified as developed countries, but countries in like emerging economies, but that they are large polluters. So what they were saying is, we are willing to support, but we want some of these other countries who have also been historically
Minister,
large polluters to also contribute.
Stick a pin for a second there, Minister.
Yes.
So we're saying that China is not a developed country, but it's an emerging economy? Something seems kind of off there.
Yes, well, it all has to do with the classification from the United Nations and some of these other organizations that do these classifications. So if they were not there, then they were emerging economies. And so they were not required to pay up like some of the other countries, or even their contributions would have been less. So we are saying now, or at least the larger economies who are willing to support loss and damage are saying, we are willing to support, but we need to include these other countries.
So a healthy portion of global manufacturing is taken up by China. You would say that China controls a healthy portion of that pie.
Yes.
So if we're looking at pollution, we're looking at emissions and what have you, then China should be held accountable for whatever it puts out into the ozone layer, if I could use that expression, right? So
certainly,
regardless of whether or not China is participating in the COP series, this country should be held responsible or accountable for its emissions nonetheless. How does that factor into the loss and damages?
Well, this is it, that they need to be brought to the table, and they need to participate. The problem with the United Nations conferences like these and commitments are that they are not really binding. So it is based on negotiation, on going to these meetings and having bilaterals, trying to meet them and have corridor talks. Because many times when you go to the negotiating table, then they are reluctant, or they are not present. And so the other countries are negotiating, trying to fix the text. for a week or so, and then these countries will come in on the day before, and they will say, listen, we do not agree to this part of the text. And you can walk out, and there's nothing you can do because the decisions are by consensus.
So then, Minister,
decisions.
Pardon my ignorance, but if that is the way that it works, then what is the point of COP? Because I often wonder if we're having these conversations, and like you rightfully mentioned, and as other stewards had rightfully mentioned, that Belize is doing its part. Other small neighboring countries are doing their part as well, but our production of greenhouse gases and fossil fuels doesn't even come close to what these larger countries produce. So what is the point of COP if they can just tap out, if they don't want to be held accountable for
well, I think
these
I think an equally important
actions.
question, April, just piggybacking on what you're asking, I think an equally important question is simply this. If nothing is binding coming out of COP, then how do we hold these respective countries responsible?
Yeah.
Because I have heard of things like the Paris Agreement from a previous
2016, I
COP,
believe. Yeah.
right? And how do we measure what has happened since then? Who do we hold accountable for what they agreed to in essence? Because you have all of these agreements and everything, but if someone could cop out, pardon the pun, then nothing holds us, accountable for getting the things done that we say we are agreeing to.
Right, and so our participation as an individual country may not be significant, but when we group up in different groups, for example, with CARICOM, with the Alliance of Small Island Developing States, with ICLAC and ILAC, and maybe even the group of African nations, then we have more support if we decide to move on the same common positions. And so that's where we can put a little bit more of pressure, and then the other countries become less than ours, and then we can try to see how we can move the meeting in the direction that we wanted. On our own, we definitely can't. But certainly from my experience, which is just 2 years now, is that every COP there is at least some way going forward. Not as much as you possibly like it to, but there is some movement. The problem is that if you don't do it, then nothing will happen. Everything reverts back to where it was before. And for example, at COP26, the president of the COP, who was from Great Britain, he stressed that what he wanted to see was that the commitments were there for mitigation of emissions, so that we keep that 1.5 alive. At COP27, there was not much done in regards to that. It was mentioned by everybody, ourselves in our national address. We mentioned it also again that we need to keep 1.5 alive. But the larger countries have to do more in terms of mitigation, so that we can keep that temperature down, and sort of like 2030, 2050, we are achieving that target. But we can't like force them to do it, but we can just try to negotiate with them and try to convince them.
I think one of the great ironies here is that you look at a small developing country like Belize that does its part, right? We have certain precedents that have been set. We look at the blue bond, we look at the issue of carbon credits and how green Belize is, relatively speaking. But then you're looking at other developed nations that Belize, in a sense, is dependent on, and those are the countries that are responsible for majority of the pollution and the emissions and the very issues that we're discussing here.
Right. And so at this COP again, following from the Glasgow COP, we are trying to push on all the different thematic areas for mitigation. Let's see that these bigger countries who are the big emitters put more commitment, strengthen or their NDCs, which are the National Determined Contributions, which is where they have their commitments to reduce emissions, to take it back and to reinforce it and make it stronger so that they can reduce more emissions. On the adaptation side, of course, we are the ones, the smaller developing countries, the vulnerable countries, who have to do the majority of the adaptation because we are the ones who are suffering the consequences from climate change. In that regard, what we want is not only technology capacity building, but we also want the finances to be able to invest in those, especially nature-based solutions for adaptation so that we can build resilience to the effects of climate change. We have issues, for example, on Article 6, which deals with markets and non-markets. And we want to see that if after we have committed certain amount of NDC emission reductions, that whatever extra we have that we can be able to sell as carbon credits so that we can get back some funding so that we can reinvest back into nature, but also to put into adaptation to build resilience for our countries. And then now the issue of loss and damage, which is more dealing with the historical effects of these large polluters who cause all the destruction to our countries after these major events, but also because of accumulation of the events. I know it's not easy, but we are not the only countries doing it. We are certainly lucky that we have good negotiators. So I want to certainly mention that apart from our team from Belize, we also have Ambassador Fuller, who is our lead negotiator. We have Ambassador Felsen, who assists at the level of AOSIS and of Caribbean, and she leads in finance and other areas. But from Belize, we had Dr. Gladden, who is the National Climate Change Officer, who was there leading the delegation as our focal point on this side. We have somebody from the ministry, Mr. Colin Mattis, who was also there leading the issue of mitigation at the AOSIS level. We have Ms. Edalme, who was also responsible at the AOSIS level to lead the area of transparency. Another one of our members of our delegation, Heidi Sosa, looking at loss and damage, and Sumit Betancourt looking at Article 6 and markets. So I think that we still managed to get something done, good representation. At the end of COP, also what we managed to do was to get Dr. Gladden, who assumed a seat on the Technology Executive Committee of the organization, and Dr. Williams, who is my CEO, assumed a seat on the Global Adaptation Fund Board. So I think our participation makes sense because we can get on these boards and we can try to influence things to come our way or for the region.
Minister, I don't disagree. I do think that for the most part, Belize does try its absolute best to stay green and to uphold some of these laws and to put some of these green laws into effect. But the world just reached 8 billion in population size. We are 8 billion in the world, and majority of these climate change actions do come from the smaller countries, of course, but the persons that are producing are the larger countries. And so I guess my overall question is, when you are at that negotiating seat and you are trying to, I don't know if the word is convince, because I feel like everybody is aware that climate change is upon us, but do these larger countries not see the effects in their respected areas, or are they just trying their best to stabilize their economy and they don't have time to worry about climate change? They don't have time to worry about how their actions affect smaller countries because they need to create financial stability for their economy. So how does that negotiation even look like?
Yes, no, certainly these larger countries, they're developed countries, they have a lot of technology, a lot of capacity. They're the ones who are doing a lot of the innovation for different types of technology, and they are aware of what is happening, and they're cognizant of it, they mention it. But coming back to what you also said is that they are looking after their own economies, the livelihood of their people. And so, for example, the large producers of coal don't want to just stop producing overnight. So what they're asking is for a transition period. But that transition period might not allow us to be able to reduce the emissions fast enough. But understandably so, if we take it into if we look at it from our perspective also, if you have an industry where you have 20,000, 50,000 people employed, you can't just stop it overnight. But they have to do more. So, for example, some of the countries who produce petroleum are saying, well, listen, we don't want to touch that because petroleum doesn't produce emissions. It says the burning of the petroleum that does. So, they take it from that angle.
That's a loophole.
It's a semantic
exactly.
argument.
Yeah. So they say, they say climate change is what causes the emissions, not the gas. But what many people don't know too is that many times in the negotiations, I mean, you won't believe it, but it is a word. It is whether the word is too prescriptive or not, whether it is a must or a shall, or if it's a comma, because a comma before or after a certain word would mean something else. So and that's
Don't these semantics delay the process, though? I mean, are we really going to stay in a session negotiating because a comma is out of place? Is it really that serious in that aspect? Because I feel like it's stalling the overall.
Commas do matter though, but it would seem as if though those little nuances should be reserved for later down the road, as opposed to actually sitting at the table and going through the language in fine print.
Yes, certainly, and so that is what we try to do from our side. Try to move from that type of discussion into the more substantial discussion, and we try to address especially the issue of finance, because we know that if we don't have the finance, we can't do the adaptation projects that we want to build resilience. So we have to fight for that. While we were trying to see how we can move or sort of divert some of the finance that goes to mitigation so that we can have some to go to adaptation and try to strike a balance. And adaptation is only about 20% of global climate finance. So we were trying to make it at least 40 or 50%. And it went nowhere.
Let's localize for a second, Minister. Where do we as a country stand coming out of COP27? What is Belize's mandate going forward?
From my perspective, I think that we still have to consider a green economy. We have to start to invest in nature, in some of these solutions that will bring some resiliency to the country. So one, we have to look at not only innovation, but trying to have some larger investments into renewable energy. That is certainly key. So solar power, whether it's small singular turbines for electricity, biofuels and stuff like that we have to do so that we can reduce the cost of our energy. But at the same time, reducing emissions, which we don't, as you know, we don't classify in that high group, but we still have to do some. But it will also create employment. And so we have to look at areas where when we do these projects, they are not only because we're doing the emission reduction, but it also creates employment and provides livelihood for our people. So we have to look at it from that standpoint. So if you ask me, we have a project called the Bond Challenge where we have committed actually to plant about 130,000 hectares of forest to do some restoration. So if we can get people to start collecting seeds, to do their nurseries, to plant these trees for restoration, that is a means of employment, because creating a nursery is employment. You can sell those plants, whether the government or the private sector can invest to get this restoration done. and so that is a way of
Minister, where are we in the no plastic, no styrofoam commitment? I know that this is a plan prior to your administration, but where are we in that aspect in terms of trying to go green?
So the regulations were passed, and so for single-use plastics. But and so there are conditions for the plastics that are being imported. The Bureau of Standards set the standards for the importation of biodegradable products, so that those substitute the regular 100% plastics. I think we are moving in the right direction. It is working, maybe not as fast as we want, but it is. So we have to try to see how we can push it further. We also have to see how we can incorporate other plastic materials. We need to see how we can start, for example, looking at our beaches and say, okay, if you come to the beach, you cannot use any type of plastic. If you go to a protected area, there should be no plastics at all. If you go to Mountain Pine Ridge, no plastics, because those will go directly into the stream that go to feed the Makal River and flow down. So those are some of the areas that we have to address. But also we have to look at how we can be involved in the circularity aspect of the economy, because we have to see if we have the volumes to be able to invest or attract investment into recycling of some of those plastics that can come back into another usable product. Otherwise, they'll continue ending up in the rivers, continue going into the ocean. And so if we can hold it back and improve or increase the longevity of those products before they are finally discarded. So those are some of the areas that we have to do in terms of plastic. But on the global level, in Nairobi last year, or earlier this year, sorry, it was agreed that there will be the establishment of a convention on non-plastic use, or at least the reduction of plastics. And so that is being worked upon. And I think that what they are doing there now is not only addressing recycling, but addressing plastics from the entire life cycle of plastics, from the production to the distribution to the recycling and everything else.
All right, Minister, as we conclude our conversation with you this morning, I'd like for us to segue to another topic while I have you with us online.
Sure.
The National Environmental Appraisal Committee, in respect of the Port of Belize expansion project, has, I understand, rendered a decision. Have you been informed of what that decision is, and where are we in respect of this ongoing matter?
I have been asked the question certainly late last week. To be truthful, I haven't been completely apprised of the entire results of the NIAC concluded meeting. I can't really comment much. I think what you have heard is what I have heard, maybe saying no, but I have no details as yet. And for me to be able to comment and give more details, I would also have to await for that letter that comes from the Department of Environment to the developer, because that would be the official letter going forward.
Okay, but your chief executive officer sits as the chair of NIAC, correct?
Yes.
Hasn't he had any conversation with you, even in an informal capacity, to let you understand or let you know where they are regarding this issue?
Yes, certainly. But we won't be able to, I wouldn't want to release information that is just coming from a conversation, but I would prefer to wait until that letter is produced, because he will sign that letter going out from the Department of Environment. Remember that we are dealing with companies who, in a way, have done some investments, who have some expectations, and nowadays everything is litigation, so you have to be careful what you say without having the right information.
How vital is it that we get this particular ball rolling in terms of setting the environmental standards for this particular port? And I ask this because we are still talking about climate change and COP, and we just talked about how other larger countries need to have these same negotiations in order to move forward and to create a green economy. So as of right now, how vital it is that we get this ball rolling?
Certainly any developer that sets in and makes a request or submits a proposal, and if they're informed that the size of the project or the expanse of the project and the location of the project requires an EIA, and then that goes through the process, and it is an extensive process, an extensive review, consultations, and everything else. So all aspects have to be considered. But remember that our ministry is the Ministry of Sustainable Development also, where sustainable development, meaning that it will have to make certain that all aspects of environment are certainly looked at, the social aspect is also looked at, and the economic aspect is also looked at. So certainly they have to do a proper revision, look at pros and cons, different areas, short-term, medium-term, long-term benefits and stuff like that. And so I think that when they come up with a final decision, they have to make certain that all those areas are looked at before coming with the final decision on whether they accept or reject a project. But Belize certainly needs to look at certain investments that are beneficial for our country. I know that the port and at least the cruise port that have been approved and those that are still awaiting a decision are certainly important. In this project, I know that submission was also made in regards to the expansion of the cargo port, which is something that is certainly needed for Belize. So all those aspects have to be considered when they make a decision.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Minister. And thank you again for joining us via Zoom to give us an update about COP27. And of course, the way that we're going to be moving forward into a green economy right here in Belize. Thank you so much, Minister.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me.
And with that, we're going to take another break, and we are already in the 16 days of activism. So we are going to be having a conversation about gender-based violence. So you don't want to miss that conversation. Stay tuned.
It's that time of the year when all that stands between you and all of this is...
Give me five, give me five, give me five!
That's all it takes. Get your coupons at Channel 5 and Coney Drive and Channel 5's website. Then, starting Monday, December 5th, keep those phones close and tune into Channel 5 at 8 p.m. as we start our nightly giveaways until Friday, December 9th. Remember, when the phone rings, don't say
hello.
Say, give me five.
Technology is ubiquitous, and it's transforming how, when, and where we work. Fulltech Systems is placing award-winning devices in the hands of information workers, allowing them to work without compromise in a world without wires, to innovate, create, and to maximize productivity anytime, anywhere, satisfying the needs of the desk-centric remote and field worker and every other worker in between. We are providing the industry's best devices to businesses going through the process of digital transformation. Partner with us today to provide the solutions that will allow your employees to work effectively and efficiently to enhance your customers' experience. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Social Security, transforming service delivery. My Social Security is your secure online account to manage all your Social Security information. My Social Security launched in March 2021 with registration service to apply online for new or replacement Social Security cards. Upgrades to My Social Security continues with a new look, enhanced customer experience, and its newest feature, Sickness Benefit Online application. With My Social Security, You can create your account, log in, and take control of your Social Security information. This includes applying for a new or replacement Social Security card for yourself, child, or dependent. Make appointments online and submit your complete sickness benefit claim package. Our customer care team is here to provide you, our valued customers, with real-time support. Connect with one of our customer care agents through direct messages on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, or live chat, or follow our YouTube channel for more information, tutorials, and guides. A complete 360 view of your Social Security information is coming soon, which includes a new employer portal for employers, businesses, and self-employed persons, contributions history and statements, all SSB benefits, medical portal for registered doctors, and fingerprint enrollment all in one place. Social Security at your fingertips. The significant enhancement of service delivery to you is here. My Social Security.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our 2022 Virtual Ocean Hero Awards.
With eCash, bill payment is extremely convenient, and all utility companies accept eCash payments. What's even better? You get to split bills with your roommates, siblings, or whoever you desire. Simply open your eCash app, go to Bill Pay, tap the respective utility company, enter the information, and pay the bill. Then tap the transaction made. Tap Split the bill. Select Evenly. Send the request to who you are splitting the bill with, and get notified when they pay. Talk about making life easy and avoiding confusion. You can split the bill for restaurants, grocery stores, and for any eCash payment you make. To find your next yummy meal, hair treatment, or chill spot, simply open the app and utilize the geolocation service to see nearby businesses that accept eCash. Geolocation and bill payment make life a whole lot easier.
What is Medriva? Medriva is the easiest and safest way of booking a taxi or delivery service. Here's a guide on how to use our services. Download the app, available in the Google Play Store and the Apple Store. Tap where you're going. Your location will be picked up automatically, and you can change location by entering a business name, street, or PIN location. Select delivery or economy, the number of packages or persons, your payment option, cash, credit card, or eCash. Tap confirm, and a driver will accept your booking. You'll see the driver's profile picture, name, license plate, and the color of the vehicle. You can also message and call the driver. You will see real-time tracking of your driver approaching you, and you will be notified when he or she has arrived. Rate the driver by your experience. An electronic receipt will be provided. Tap the hamburger menu. Tap points for every ride completed. With Medriva, you can earn cashback deals to use on your next ride. Tap promo code. This is your special code to share with family and friends to earn discounts on your next ride. Medriva, transportation at your fingertips.
Do you qualify for Amnesty 2022? This is your opportunity to find out. You qualify if you are registered as an asylum seeker with the Refugee Department before the 31st of March 2020, residing in Belize before the 31st of December 2016, have children born in Belize on or before the 31st of December 2021, completed your education in Belize, married to a citizen of Belize for a year or more, living in a common law union with a citizen of Belize for 5 years or more, referred by the Department of Human Services, gainfully employed in Belize for 5 years. To find out more on how to apply, go online to www.immigration.gov.bz. Be prepared. The registration period will be from the 2nd of August to the 30th of November 2022. Belize Amnesty 2022. Let's continue to build Belize together.
Smart introduces Real Unlimited postpaid plans, providing customers with unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data. Now that's a real great deal. With Smart Plus, Share 1 and 2, and Enterprise 1 and 2 plans, you can talk as much as you want, text as much as you want, and for the first time ever in Belize, you can enjoy unlimited data with your postpaid plan. So come in and sign up for an unlimited postpaid plan and enjoy limitless possibilities. In addition, other plans such as the Flex Junior, Choice, and Select have been boosted with a lot more talk, text, and data, providing you with the best value for your budget. Be unlimited with Smart. It's time to power your dollar with Smart.
And welcome back. Our second segment this morning is a discussion on gender-based violence. As we mentioned prior to the commercial break, we are in the 16 days of activism. And of course, our conversation this morning revolves around the 16 days and the issues that fall within public awareness for this particular purpose. That being said, we have been joined by the Program Officer for the National Women's Commission, Eleanor Murillo. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're also joined by the Executive Director of Belize Family Life Association, BFLA. We're joined by Joan Burke. Good morning.
Good
morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Let's talk first of all about the 16 days of activism. It's an annual commemoration where we raise awareness on gender-based violence and, of course, the role of men and women in families. Let's start with you, Ms. Murillo.
Okay, so 16 days begins on November 25th, which was on Friday, which is the International Day for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And so we usually start off our 16 days with a launch. This year, along with the Belize City Council, we ensured that we place up the 16 flags at the roundabout. In addition to having a banner there that explains what the 16 days is all about. And as you rightly said, it's a time that we amp up our different services or different education awareness. We ramp up our awareness and so on to all sectors of the community across the country. And it ends on December 10th, which is International Human Rights Day. So government, NGOs, UN organization, diplomatic corps, everybody come together. And during these 16 days, we have activities throughout the 16 days.
What is the central theme for this year's 16 days of activism?
Okay, this year's theme is Unite Activism to End Violence Against Women and Girls. And I think it's so important because, gender-based violence is not easy. Even with awareness, even with education, even with getting partners to work with you, it's not easy. So unite, and also the activism, it has to be togetherness. We have to do it together if we really want to see changes within our society.
When we talk about gender-based violence, we tend to think of it as just a household problem. You are experiencing a particular abuse that is between you and your family within your household. Let's talk about how that seeps into society and how that affects everybody in our environment. Let's go with you, Miss.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
When we look at gender-based violence and understanding the dynamics of gender-based violence, the root causes within the home, And because then the home shapes what happens in the society. And so when we look at the effects, earlier this morning, Miss Maria and I, we were talking, and we say, you know, and I guess because we were privileged we are much older, right? So we know what Belize was before we have all this violence. And in the home, it's almost like the gender-based violence has been normalized. And so because it has been normalized in the home, it's now normalized in the society. So the street violence, that lack of respect, that lack of self-worth, everything basically starts from within the home. And so now we look at, and sometimes I smile when I watch the news and I listen to parents defending the action of a child. And we will hear things like, but I don't know why the police may do that, because at least it never kill him, right? It only rob him. Or why are they doing this? Because after all, it never slap him, he only push him. You know, and so these things now have been accepted because this is what we see in the home. And I feel that because there is not that in-depth understanding of the impact of gender-based violence on the growth and development of a country, then, you know, we tend to just accept it or turn a blind eye.
What prompts the behavior for such a thing? What triggers a person to become violent towards another member of their family in the household?
I believe there are a number of factors, but one of the things that we definitely can say is that the inability to reason, the inability to communicate, and basic respect. Respect for me as an individual, I may see something different. We can agree to disagree respectfully. And you know, when we look, and of course I have no scientific data for this, but at the end of the day, it has to do with problem solving. And I always look forward to the results of PSE math and CXC math, because at the end of the day, math is problem solving. And so even as I said, I don't know that if there's a correlation, but the fact that we cannot sit down and be rational and try to resolve issue, try to solve without hitting, without insulting, right? Those are some of the things that then just lead to, we believe that then the only thing that we can solve an issue with is either we pull a gun or a knife, throw a hand, and it has been normalized.
We talk about what the BFLA, well, we've spoken about what the National Women's Commission is doing for the 16 days of activism. How does the BFLA collaborate, and what are your plans for the 16 days as well?
Okay, because when we look at the data, we see women and girls are not the only ones that are affected by GBV. And because there's a victim and there's a perpetrator. And very often we work with the victims and not with the perpetrator. And if we reflect, sometimes the perpetrator was a victim before becoming a perpetrator. So what we're doing this year, we are working with our girls, doing sessions with very small cohorts, teaching them self-love, self-worth, and how do you express that self-love. Because very often we spend time as victim judging ourselves and re-victimizing ourselves and blaming ourselves. We are one to ensure that we empower our girls and women, and we work with our boys and men to also be empowered, right? And to love themselves as well. So this year we are trying to blend, but working quite a bit with our girls. Also, we do know that sometimes women find themselves having to remain in abusive relationships for various reasons. One being their economic dependence on their male partners. So on the 10th, we want to do like a little pop-up market right at BFLA for young entrepreneurs. Christmas is coming, and so put together nice packages that persons can come and visit and make Christmas happy for somebody, whilst at the same time, because we have very talented young persons who are very crafty, and so they can then display their stuff. We also believe that the part of self-love is enjoying who you are as a sexual being and being able to express that sexual being in different ways. So we're having like a little wine and cheese kind of thing. Call it sip and sensation.
Okay.
No, sip and seduction, right? Because we all, BFLA is all about sexual and reproductive health, and we try everything to remove that the disease focus from health and integrate that, the pleasure part of it. And we do that without any apologies. Because I think also, one of the contributing factors to gender-based violence starts in the bedroom as well, where even though we are intimate with each other, we cannot express really how we feel, and we expect that our partners are mind readers and they can basically, we can communicate the way that we need to do. So on the 10th as well, we're having this sip and seduction kind of wine and cheese setting.
Wow. I want
intimate setting for lack of
a better word. But no, there's so many factors that stood out as you were discussing, and I think that I wanted to center focus on the economic issues, because that kind of seems to go across board, not just for women but for men as well, and that kind of does, I think, provide some sort of self-esteem problems in the home and so forth if you're not producing X amount of money for your family and so forth. When it comes to that part of gender-based violence, for economic instability, I guess my question stands to you, Ms. Maria. How does the National Women's Commission then come in and try to tackle that kind of issue for women and girls?
Well, as you may know, we have our newly revised national gender policy, and wealth and employment creation is a major priority area of that specific of our policy. And so again, we have to work with partners, build trade, the government of Belize. We know they have the MSCE roadshow program, where now women can be empowered. If you have a skill and you already have a small business, but you don't have the know-how, because that is one of the things we realize, that a lot of women have talent in terms of doing whatever it may be and can be entrepreneurs, but programs that we cater have to be well-rounded. So it's not just giving them money to start up a business, but to guide them through in becoming an entrepreneur. We have women who maybe, let's say, sell bread in the evening, and they don't see themselves as business persons. So you come back to the self-esteem, self-worth, knowing who you are. And so how do we teach them? We have programs where we want to show them how to keep their books, how to open bank accounts, how to fill out the social security documents and the government of Belize documents for tax and so on. So it cannot just be we hand you money and you go and you open a business, but it has to be guided. And we have to mentor and hold your hand until, yes, you understand that all this will help you sustain a business, because in the past, you give them the money and they ended up spending it on bills or food or whatever it may be, and the business don't really last. So how do we ensure that the programs that we implement is holistic and mentor and continue to hold their hands until they're steady enough to say, yes, I can do it on my own now. Yeah.
I think one of the hardest part about that, registering your business. How do I go?
How do you, the know-how, and it's very frustrating for some persons. Even for us to fill out some of those forms that is asking 1,000 questions. So how do we ensure we guide them through it?
The woman that has children and has to maintain her household all the time, how would she be able to manage and balance? She doesn't think she can. The commercial for the 16 days of activism, I really appreciated that it was all narrated by men.
Oh yes, the one with the cabinet.
Yes,
yes.
I really appreciate
that was intentional.
So let's talk about why that was intentional. Because you would think that, okay, you're trying to send a message for women and girls. So why, so why have it be narrated by these men, and not just any men, but these men in authority. in particular places in power? So let's talk about that.
We feel that it's important, as we say, it's not only about women and girls, but men and boys, but also our leader. These are decision makers. They are area representative. They have women and men and boys and girls in their communities. So how do we also empower them, give them information, and let them get on board to say that this is an important topic, and we are with this. We condemn gender-based violence, and we will ensure that the laws and policies we put in place are in alignment to strengthen the whole system. And so we felt that it was very important, along with UNDP, who supported us. We want to do 3 videos for the 16 days, and that was one of them, where we actually was fortunate enough to engage the leaders to say, we stand with this, we're against gender-based violence. And it's very important for us as well, because even one of the activities we are doing during the 16 days is to engage the municipal bodies to also raise flag and awareness within their hall, their city hall or their town hall. And we have some leaders who are not with that. One leader said, and this is a leader from a district that has the highest case of gender-based violence. That time again.
Here's the thing, though. If I could jump in, beyond what you just said, which I believe is alarming.
Yes.
But I think the issue of GBV should go beyond just 16 days.
It does.
Because it's a perennial issue that we're facing in our country, in our society, right? So while the 16 days is great to raise awareness, I think the issue should be discussed on a year-round basis.
That's the idea.
Finding different activities, finding different means of communicating that message so that it remains in the public discourse that GBV is an issue that Belizeans are facing in their homes and elsewhere.
It's an all-round effort. It's from 16 days to 365. That's where was our team last year, and we continue to keep it as our backdrop from 16 to 365. Government, NGOs, everybody is doing this work all year long. It's just that we take this period to amp up what we do and to shed more light and more awareness. But it's not just during 16 days that we do this work. It's all year, BFLA, YWCA, YES, Women and Family Support, the Human Services, the UN organization. All year round, we're looking at policies, we're looking at the education component, and so on, and the engagement of stakeholders and even to improve civil society and the smaller NGOs and so on. So it's an all year round effort. However, we shed more light during the 16 days.
Ms. Burke,
can I? Going back to the question asked, why men and I believe that the discussion on GBV, as we have all agreed, has to happen at every levels. And I think that very often when we move from the community level and then we go into leadership level, whether it's political whether it's at the religious leaders level, whichever level, we feel that what is happening here doesn't happen up there. And our leaders are from the same homes in the community that they might have been exposed to GBV, they might have learned certain behavior, and until we move away from the fact that gender-based violence or the violence is only hitting, then we will not be able to understand the importance of engaging these individuals. I look at house meetings, for example, and the level of disrespect that is being displayed in the house where we want these safe policies and all of that we are talking about to be addressed and to be approved, and for the example to be set in the honorable house, and we don't see that.
It leaves a lot to be desired. Actually.
Right. Then we look at the behavior being displayed by our political leaders and by our religious leaders. Some of them, yes, they hit. Some might not hit, but the psychological, the emotional violence, right? Because we know if we are to talk about baby mama drama and all of that, that are a part of GBV, then again, there's very little to be desired.
Baby mama drama is real though.
It is.
You can't necessarily go around that. I mean,
right, but what I'm saying, at the end of the day, it has to do with how we are being socialized and back the cause in the homes.
I will piggyback because yes, it is a display when we look at our political leaders, those in authority, and we hold them to some sort of regard, you know, to be our leaders. But also, it's not just them and their actions, but it is the public's response. For some reason, and I know it's not just Belize, it's a worldwide thing. We love the drama. We for some reason we feed off of it, and we are going to circulate that video of somebody abusing their wife like 1,000 million times over a man being good to their spouse. So it is that cycle where yes, maybe you can change a cultural act within the house, but then it leads the question to the results. Will more people engage and watch a respectable house? Will more people engage and listen to, you know, they're not a Disney ma or them pa in the house, right? So it's a trickle effect of what we want to also change within ourselves as a society.
And that's why I say it starts at the home. You know, when I was in Jamaica, there was a certain newspaper, right? And it was a daily newspaper. And the owner said that, listen, you can't have, well, their policy is that you're not going to have anybody brain or body lying on the street or anything on the front page.
Yeah.
Right? And that was the same thing. Hey, we want to know if this newspaper is going to sell because it's not sensationalized and all that. But they made a difference. And I think very often because yes, and I totally agree, there will be a pocket of the society that may not want to see the pose of the good man or the good woman. They may not, but that does not represent the majority.
Yeah.
And so until we can change that mindset, and the change starts with us, you know.
Yeah.
As an individual, if we say we are no tolerant, I am not going to share this post. Because we cannot on one hand want the change when it suits us.
Yeah.
And on the other hand said, you know what, no, these are the norm, so just let me ride with the program. Because if we develop that attitude, then we will not get the desired change. Right? And the change that we will make today, it will be that for those coming behind us.
All right, 16
Okay.
days of activism. Final thought. You're wearing orange, and I presume it is because
It's 16 days.
for
yes.
16 days. So for 16 days we wear orange.
We wear orange, yes.
And say zero tolerance to
Tolerance.
gender-based violence.
Zero tolerance for gender-based violence. Miss Joanne, Miss Eleanor, thank you so much for coming. And of course, we look forward to seeing what more the BFLA and the National Women's Commission have in terms of their activities for the 16 days. Where can we see the calendar of events?
You can reach out to the National Women's Commission Facebook page. We have shared it with partners, so hopefully they will share the calendar of activities as well. I think we have somebody coming in on Wednesday as well, so they will more talk about the activities and our grand finale on December 10th, which we will have a fundraising gala. So they will talk about some of the activities on Wednesday.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much for having us.
And with that, we are going to take our final break, and we'll be right back for wrap up. Stay tuned.
Smart introduces Real Unlimited Postpaid Plans, providing customers with unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data. Now that's a real great deal. With Smart Plus, Share 1 and 2, and Enterprise 1 and 2 plans, you can talk as much as you want, text as much as you want, and for the first time ever in Belize, you can enjoy unlimited data with your postpaid plan. So come in and sign up for an unlimited postpaid plan and enjoy limitless possibilities. In addition, other plans such as the Flex Junior, Choice, and Select have been boosted with a lot more talk, text, and data, providing you with the best value for your budget. Be unlimited with Smart. It's time to power your dollar with Smart.
Galenia Hospital, located in Cancun, Mexico's premier tourism destination, is a state-of-the-art healthcare facility that provides highly specialized medical services. We are Quintana Roo's biggest private hospital with board-certified doctors and staff. Some of our services include Cath Lab, Adult Intensive Care Unit, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, emergency rooms, operating theaters, ambulance services, and more. We are a medically accredited hospital by JCI, Accreditation Canada International, and General Health Council, providing extraordinary care in every specialty, from our cardiology department to our neurology center. We are focused on treating the entire person, body, mind, and spirit. Contact us at medicaltourism@hospitalgalenia.com or visit our website at www.hospitalgalenia.com. Come to Galenia Hospital in Cancun for a truly personal medical care experience.
Your life just got a lot less complicated with Belize Bank contactless MasterCard debit card. Introducing our standard debit and MasterCard Platinum debit cards. Now you can make purchases anywhere MasterCard is accepted with one tap, pay and go. Your contactless card never has to leave your hands, especially in these times. And your card is embedded with multiple layers of security. Platinum cardholders get to enjoy extra benefits like price protection, purchase protection, trip inconvenience, and luggage protection, just to name a few. Start enjoying a cashless lifestyle today with the Belize Bank.
It's that time of the year when all that stands between you and all of this is...
Give me five. Give me five. Give me five.
That's all it takes. Get your coupons at Channel 5 and Coney Drive and Channel 5's website. Then, starting Monday, December 5th, keep those phones close and tune in to Channel 5 at 8 p.m. as we start our nightly giveaways until Friday, December 9th. Remember, when the phone rings, don't say
hello.
Say, give me five.
And we are back, coming into a close the Monday morning show here at Open Your Eyes. We would like to thank all of our guests this morning for coming in. Minister Orlando Habet joining us on Zoom spoke to us about COP27. And of course, our friends from the National Women's Commission and the BFLA to talk to us about the 16 days of activism and gender-based violence against women and girls. Of course, we'd like to thank all of you for tuning in this morning with us here on OYE. If you have any questions or concern, you can always drop us a line right here at oye@channel5belize.com. You can always catch us on our highlights on our live stream on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and our highlights on Instagram at OYE Belize. We'll see you again tomorrow when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Be sure to keep your eyes, your minds,
and your hearts open.
See you tomorrow. Have a safe day.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.